On the day of the wedding, Felix was fooling around with his mistress in the dressing room. Amidst the laughter of the groomsmen, he exchanged a deep kiss with the girl, looking indifferent. It was over quickly. The wedding proceeded as usual. Don't make a scene. I didn't make a scene. I quietly ran away from the wedding. 3 years later, I was caught by Felix. He sneered with clenched teeth, looking fierce. The Maybach parked on the side rolled down its window. The man looked cold and was about to speak, but a kid peeked out from the back seat. "Uncle," the child earnestly said, "my mom is praying not to run into any crazy people again." 30 minutes before the wedding started, I found Felix in the dressing room. From the other side came the unbearable laughter. "The ceremony is about to start. Why is Felix still fooling around with me here?" His brothers said one after another. "Is Felix still into this one? Felix is getting married every day, and being the groom every night." That's what they said, but Felix at least has an engagement with Sophia. "No way. Is someone really afraid of Sophia?" Felix seemed to chuckle. He said, "Okay, stop it. The family is nagging. Sophia is obedient. Get out. I have something to do." Everyone pushed the door laughing and teasing as they left. I bumped into them outside. "Sophia." In the silence, someone gasped. I silently looked at the messy dressing room. There was also a girl sitting on Felix's lap, her face not clearly visible. "Did you hear everything?" Felix was indifferent. "Don't make a scene. The wedding will go on. I'll be there soon." The white veil at the cuff was almost torn by my grip. I tried to hold back the trembling in my voice. "Sophia, behave." He casually soothed me, while still playing with the girl's long hair. Seeing me standing still, he finally frowned with confusion. "No way, Sophia." He looked at the tears on my cheeks, and suddenly realized something, then bent over laughing. "It can't be. Do you really think I married you because I liked you?" Felix seemed amused, teasingly repeating, "Sophia, you really believed it. Isn't it true?" I stared blankly at Felix, who was almost in tears of laughter. "Felix and I grew up together since childhood. My family declined, and when we met again, it was already over 10 years later. The boy I used to call my brother when I was a child had grown up. He set off fireworks all over the city to propose to me. The dazzling fireworks lit up the night sky, and his eyes and brows were full of emotions. Sophia said she would marry me when she was young. Now, will that still count?" My nails dug into my flesh, the pain bringing me back to reality. Thankfully discovered in time. "I think it doesn't have to count." The gazes of Felix's brothers were all on me, amused, with a touch of mockery. I took a deep breath and walked up to Felix. In his surprised eyes, I took off the engagement ring that I had personally designed from his left ring finger. "Sophia, what are you doing?" He stopped abruptly. I quickly took off my own ring, and threw both rings out of the window into the swimming pool. "It's fine, you can continue," I explained seriously. "I just didn't want you to see this ring and dampen your mood." I ran away, walking out of the dressing room at a normal pace. I tore the fishtail dress's obstructive hem, walking faster and faster. The wedding venue was just too big. I briskly passed through the banquet hall, and turned into a directionless corridor. The announcement for my capture was already playing on the speakers. "Sophia is angry with me. I don't know where she went." Felix's low, hoarse voice sounded. "If any of the guests see her, please bring her back to the dressing room. We offer a big reward." He insisted on catching me back to finish this play with him. A passing female guest sighed, really envious of the bride. "Do you want this blessing, do you?" From a distance, I felt like someone was surrounding me in this direction. They probably had already spotted me on the surveillance. I was at a loss and hurriedly turned into a corridor of guest rooms. Felix had prepared resting rooms for every guest attending the wedding, but this corridor was too long, almost endless. The sparse footsteps of the guards behind were already close. I endured the pain in my ankle, and slipped into the nearest room to me. Through the door, I could hear the guards muttering, "Strange, where did she go?" I covered my mouth, suppressing the breath in my throat firmly. After a while, the footsteps outside returned to silence. I breathed a sigh of relief, but then I found there was someone in the room. He was a man in a suit, his long legs crossed, and he lazily watched me. Now, he was chin in his hand looking at me leisurely. When I looked up, he lightly smiled. "Ah, have I discovered something? A runaway bride?" It was the look of a predator staring at its prey. I instinctively stepped back, but my thin high heel turned sideways, and I didn't notice that I twisted my ankle. With a cry, I fell into a pair of arms that smelled of cedar. Subtle, clean, and inexplicably familiar. I looked up in astonishment, tears streaming down my eyes involuntarily. "Have we met somewhere before?" Before I could finish my sentence, the man lifted me onto the bed. "Are you that afraid of me?" He frowned, pinching my swollen ankle. He stared at me with a blush, feeling extremely embarrassed, trying to save some face for myself. "No," I quietly defended myself. I twisted it because I ran too much earlier. The man kept a straight face, not saying a word, unsure if he had listened. I tugged on his sleeve. Can you not hand me over? He looked down at me. Your families have an engagement. I can't help you. I let go of his sleeve, closed my eyes in almost despair. The man smiled softly. Sophia, are you considering changing the engagement partner? On the radio, Felix's warrant was played over and over again. Maybe he, like Felix, needed a marriage partner to deal with the elders in the family. Despite that, I gathered up the courage to ask softly, will you still get involved with many girls? Don't worry. I'm not like those young boys. The man shook his head, a hint of barely noticeable smile in his eyes. The start time of the wedding kept being delayed. Felix blocked off the venue and made a big fuss searching for me. There was a determined look that seemed like he wouldn't give up until he found me, as if he had made up his mind to marry me. Unconsciously, night fell. Felix was becoming frantic. William, looking at me nursing my leg injury in bed, sighed. Looks like we won't be able to leave today. I absent-mindedly stirred my phone with the leg that wasn't injured. Why do I feel hotter and hotter? I peeked out from under the blanket, feeling the need to lower the air conditioning. Hot. The words came out weak and sultry. William frowned, coming to touch my forehead, asking what was wrong. My mind was a mess as I murmured unclearly, hot. Did I eat something wrong and got a fever? I recalled and suddenly remembered that Felix had given me a glass of milk before entering the changing room in the morning. It tasted weird. He just smiled and said fresh milk imported from abroad tastes like that, and Sophia would like it. At that moment, that's what Felix said. His hand on my forehead was long and cold, like white jade. The burning sensation in my chest made me lose my senses. When I regained some consciousness, my wedding dress and William's suit were scattered on the floor. William looked at me nonchalantly, giving off an indulgent vibe. He didn't resist at all, as if indulging a naive junior. But when I saw the messy kiss marks on his chest, I couldn't help but shudder. William, I'm sorry. What am I doing? I panicked and tried to hide back under the blanket, only to be pulled out by William. Lit the fire and now want to run. He chuckled angrily. No, let me explain. But William forcefully pried open my lips, too deep. After the kiss, I covered my lips, blushing from coughing. I'm sorry for your hit-and-run behavior. William's voice was deep with a hint of a smile. He nonchalantly kneaded my wet, red lips. I'll teach you how to take responsibility. I was awakened by an urgent knocking on the door. My head was aching. Everything hurt. I felt like falling apart. The old man's words were deceiving. I groggily tried to figure out the voice outside, but froze. It was Felix's voice. Frantically, I looked for William. He had just taken a shower, bare-chested, water droplets running down his abdomen into the towel wrapped around his waist. I swallowed nervously, my right ankle swollen high. Lifting my left foot, I kicked him in frustration. William grabbed my foot, laughing. Awake now. He casually threw the cigarette in his mouth into the trash. I pointed to the door. Felix is outside. What should we do? William ambled over to the door. Sophia, what's up? Felix, who was banging on the door outside, paused. William. He grumbled unwillingly. You're here too. Laughing, William replied, still haven't found your little bride. Annoyed by the mention, Felix grew more agitated. No, we've searched the rooms. The last surveillance showed she might be on this side of the guest rooms. Felix suspiciously asked, seeing the red marks on William's shoulder. William, is there a woman in your room? Eavesdropping silently, I covered my head with the blanket. I will introduce next time. William chuckled casually. Not now. She was exhausted last night and is still sleeping. I followed William back to his place. His reason was simple. Felix must have sent people to watch my place, and if I went back, I'd be caught for sure. I agreed wholeheartedly. William was busy and left for a business trip abroad the next day. Before leaving, he kissed my forehead. A kiss, then separation. Very restrained, very gentlemanly. When I come back, I'll bring you a souvenir, he said, then reminded me, don't go out much. Felix is still looking for you. I nodded. The search for Sophia was front-page news, surprising and intriguing the curious onlookers. But somehow, the news gradually faded away. On this day, I was painting in the studio William had set up for me. Just as I put down the brush, I received a call from Felix's mom. I stared at the caller ID, hesitating for a few seconds. My mom and Felix's mom were best friends, which led to my arranged marriage with Felix. My phone was off the day I ran away from the wedding. When I turned it on later, there were countless missed calls, many of them from her. It wouldn't be right not to explain to her. I pressed the answer button. Sophia. The woman's voice sounded weary on the other end. Come to the mansion. Felix can't keep any food down, insisting on seeing you. She said Felix couldn't find me, so he jumped into the pool in the middle of the night to search for the engagement ring I had thrown away. He searched all night, but couldn't find it. Instead, he ended up with a high fever and unconsciousness. I organized my words, about to refuse. Seeing my silence, she sighed. Your mom's belongings are still partly here, was going to give them to you on your wedding day. Come and take them with you this time. I brought 2 bodyguards left by William and went to the mansion. Felix was indeed very ill, looking like he was falling apart within a few days. Sophia's here. Felix's mom handed me the medicine bowl, then left. The 2 bodyguards were stopped at the door, leaving me alone with the semi-conscious Felix in the room. The air was eerily quiet. I stirred the medicine in the bowl, the sound of the porcelain clinking clear. Felix opened his eyes slightly, grabbing my wrist when he saw me. Sophia, don't leave. I looked at him calmly, offering the spoon to his lips. Drink. Felix gazed at me for a while, finally obediently opening his mouth, until the bottom of the medicine was visible. I put down the bowl and turned to leave. Wait. Despite his illness, the man mustered the strength to grab hold of me. Trembling, he searched under the pillow and brought out something, holding it out to me. It was the engagement ring. I found it. Felix whispered softly, can you forgive me, Daisy? It was really Mandy, who didn't know her place, and caused a scene in front of you. Without looking at the ring, I forcefully pulled my dress away from his hands. Well, you really are easily influenced and were even forced by Mandy to make love in the changing room, I said. Felix's face instantly darkened. Sophia, you're out of line. He tried to speak again, but I calmly cut him off. It doesn't matter what you say. Today, I'm here to break off the engagement. As I left, I heard Felix's cold laugh. Sophia, once you walk out that door, you'll come back to beg me sooner or later. Felix's maid led me through the front hall, then through several corridors. Furrowing my eyebrows, I wondered where we were going. The elderly maid smiled gently and said, Madam is waiting for you in the backyard. Sophia, please, take a few more steps. She also stopped my bodyguard, saying, sorry. The situation was tense for a moment. After hesitating for a while, I remembered my mother's belongings and had to take a step back. If I'm not out in 2 hours, contact William immediately, I whispered to the bodyguard, then stepped into the backyard of Sophia's house. 10 minutes later, I stopped in front of a gorgeous antique building. My heart sank as I heard the voice of the lady inside. Come in, I've been waiting for you. The maid next to me stared at me intensely, clearly ready to push me inside if I hesitated. Silently, I stepped across the threshold. The lady was sitting in an armchair, coldly staring at me. Kneel down, she said. I was confused, thinking I might have misheard. Before I could react, the maid who led me there had already forced me to kneel on the ground. What do you mean by this, madam? I demanded. Where are my mother's things? The lady sneered, slap in the face. The next moment, the maid raised her hand, and my face swelled up with a burning sensation. Seeing me fall silent, the lady sipped her tea leisurely. Today, I'll discipline you on Felix's behalf. You had an engagement with Felix, yet ran away publicly, causing our family to lose face. She continued, getting increasingly agitated. In the silence, I realized that the lady didn't actually have any of my mother's belongings. She set up this scheme intentionally to lure me out. With the maid pressing firmly on my back, I could only remain silent. The lady became more agitated as she spoke. Your mother passed away too soon. I'll take care of her daughter too. If she knew her daughter was so ungrateful, she wouldn't rest in peace. How dare she mention my mother like that? Unable to contain my anger, I lunged at her like a madwoman. Startled, she dropped the teacup, shattering it into pieces. Before I could unleash my fury on her, the bodyguard restrained me. Still shaken, the lady pointed at me with trembling fingers. You're insane. Almost grinding her teeth, she said, madwoman. I spoke coldly. Get this straight. I'm not married to Felix, nor have we registered for marriage. Your current actions amount to a crime of abduction, and with the deliberate harm inflicted on me, you're guilty of multiple offenses. Enraged, the lady's face turned pale. Through gritted teeth, she said, you stay here. Come out when you have come to your senses. With a heavy wooden door closing shut, the room fell into darkness again. I moved to a more comfortable corner, and waited for William to come to my rescue. He must come and rescue me, right? Starved for a day, I heard a knocking on the door. Excitedly, I approached the window, but it was Felix's face on the other side. I didn't know my mother locked you up here. He looked somewhat angry too. Sophia, why don't you just give in to my mother? You'd still be valued as my wife. I couldn't help but interrupt. Am I the only woman in the world? If your mother is so dissatisfied with me, why not find another? Felix's gaze wandered, then lowered. In a softer tone, he said, you can only be mine. Feeling lackluster, I retreated into a corner and curled up. From outside the window, Felix's scolding could be heard. Sophia, why are you so proud? I covered my ears and quieted my thoughts. If the bodyguard noticed I didn't come out, he would report it. William should now know I'm locked up in Felix's house. Lost in thought, my mind wandered. I was awakened by the sound of banging on the door. Chaos ensued outside. William, this can't be. William's cold voice rang out. I said, open the door, or I'll break it down. As the door was smashed open, the sudden sunlight made me tear up involuntarily. A tall figure walked in with grace. I was lifted horizontally by someone. He touched my face, and the pain made me gasp for breath, instinctively trying to move away. As if to not startle me, William softened his tone. Did she hit you? Nodding, I recounted yesterday's events in detail, adding emphasis. That's how it was. I delicately tugged at his sleeve. You'll stand up for me, won't you? William paused and ruffled my hair. Of course, I'll help you regain your dignity. The last memory of that day became unclear to me. Startled and fed and held captive overnight, I developed a high fever upon release. With William's promise to support me, I passed out without worry. Later, according to the bodyguard's account, William thought I had died and nearly tore down the villa. Being the family's most satisfactory successor, William punished Felix, who was still unwell, to kneel for 3 months. Furthermore, he relieved Felix of his duties and transferred him to a marginal department. Refusing to hit a woman, he had his female secretary deliver those 2 slaps instead. In the month I was in a feverish coma, Felix's household was in chaos. Finally, Grandpa stepped in to smooth things over and scolded William for going too far. To calm the public, William was sent abroad to develop new businesses. Upon waking up, the lady, wearing an unapologetic expression, apologized to me. Sophia, Aunt was in the wrong this time. She forced a smile. Aunt was indeed a little excited that day. So Aunt apologizes to you. With that, she reluctantly pushed Felix to the edge of my sickbed. Sophia, I'm sorry. I looked at them without saying a word. William saw that I was not in good spirits, and waved his hand to send the people away. Still upset, Sophia, he bent down, whispering to me softly, should I bring them back to apologize in a few days? I blinked my eyes and clumsily repeated, who are you? William paused for a moment. I smiled lightly, who are you guys? 3 years later, so, when we go back this time, will we catch the snow? I blinked and waited quietly for William's response. After helping Daisy put on her shoes, William bent down to tie my shoelaces. Yes, we will. I widened my eyes expectantly. In my memory, I grew up in Boston, but the memories from the past are blurred. I only remember marrying William, having a child, moving to Seattle, and never seeing snow again. William held my hand as he smiled. If you like it there this time, we can settle down. I nodded, but then felt frustrated. But I don't remember much about the past. What if I can't recognize old friends? Thinking about this, I felt nervous. William, didn't you mention that you know some impressive doctors in Boston? I want to go see them. William tightened his grip on my hand. Suddenly, I looked up to see him chuckling casually and saying, of course we can. Daisy mimicked his tone, cooing, of course we can, Mommy. I couldn't help but chuckle and smiled with my eyes bent. I do remember some things, like the time before leaving Boston when William and I went to church. Just as we got back to Seattle, we found out I was pregnant. So, upon landing this time, I dragged William straight there. However, William happened to have an urgent online meeting. I looked expectantly at Daisy. Daisy was pouting, pointing to her right leg that cramped up while she was sleeping last night, and it still hurt. Oh well, I sighed, because it's the weekend. There are a lot of people around. In the crowded place, I couldn't help but feel like there was a pair of eyes watching me, subtle, like a shadow, but every time I turned around, I couldn't find anyone. I furrowed my brow. Then after finishing my prayers, I was about to go find William, but just as we left the church, I was forcefully pushed against the wall by a strong force. My back slammed into the red wall, and I let out a muffled groan. It was a man in a suit, with a stern expression. Just as I was about to call for help, I heard a familiar voice saying, long time no see, Sophia. My struggling stopped. Did I know this man from before? There was something in his eyes and features that reminded me of William. I tried to remember, tentatively greeting him first. Hello. The man's movement stiffened, looking a bit strange. I pushed his hand away. If there's nothing else, I'll be going. He fell silent for a moment, then smirked abruptly. Confused, I blinked. What a strange man. Just as I was about to explain, I suddenly saw that familiar Maybach. The window of the driver's seat rolled down, and Daisy eagerly popped her head out, happily calling for me. Mommy. After calling out, she turned to respond to that strange man. Uncle, my mommy came to pray. She grinned, her eyes curving into crescent moons. Mommy's here to pray that she won't meet any crazies again. The man shivered all over, but his gaze was fixed on Daisy. I furrowed my brow, stepping between him and Daisy. Sir, I have somewhere to be today, so excuse me. The strange man, however, persisted. Sophia, is she your daughter? I looked at him puzzled. Not my daughter, can she be yours? He staggered back a few steps, then walked away in a daze. What a strange man, I thought. 7 days later, at a high society dinner, I hadn't thought about socializing. Found a corner, nibbling and sipping with Daisy. We meet again, Sophia. The couch sank next to me, and the man sat down next to me very naturally, feeling a bit embarrassed. I didn't know what else to say in a social setting. My gaze wandered around him, and then I suddenly noticed a familiar ring on his left hand. Your ring is quite lovely, I thought for a moment before awkwardly greeting him. The man seemed to freeze. He responded quietly, it was designed by my partner. I nodded. She must have good taste. After a while, silence fell. The man sitting beside me turned red. Suddenly, he tightly grabbed my wrist. There were cold water droplets falling on the back of my hand. I hesitantly realized they were tears. You? I furrowed my brow. What's gotten into you? Sophia, he choked, looking flustered with tears welling in the corners of his eyes. I regretted it. Can we get back together? I dumbfoundedly opened my mouth. Wait a minute. There must be some misunderstanding. I decisively pulled his hand away from me and resumed a normal social distance. Sir, I praised the resemblance of his eyes and eyebrows to William. I've been recovering in Seattle for these years and have forgotten some things. I've been meaning to ask, who are you? The man froze. I know, he muttered under his breath. How could you forget about me? You must still be mad at me, Sophia. Our kids are all grown up now. I rolled my eyes. Are you really crazy or faking it? Daisy, who came back with a cherry cake, was stunned. Uncle, she scratched her head, looking confused. You're not my dad, are you? He passed out. Sophia, what's going on? When William finished his business and came to find me, this was the scene he walked into. He looked at the unconscious man, looking puzzled, then glanced at my expression. He hit the floor. I pointed at the wild man, filing a serious complaint. I found out that the man's name is Felix, William's grandnephew. Funny enough, I am actually his elder. The ambulance took the man away, and I was left bored with my cake. Yeah, William half smiled. This guy really has some nerve. When William took me back to the mansion, it was a rare sunny day. He said, just in case the disrespectful younger generation tried to offend me again, he'd have them know who I am. I also saw Felix. He had injured his foot when he collapsed that day and was still in a wheelchair. Felix, this is your aunt. He then picked up Daisy with one hand. This is my daughter, your cousin. William's eyes held a smile, but there was a hint of uneasiness. So, it's you. Felix stared coldly at William, almost crushing the glass in his hand. William smiled without saying a word, and the atmosphere got a bit strange for a moment. I cleared my throat, politely greeted him, and said, hello. Felix paused, finally shifting his gaze to my face. Sophia, he said softly, I have a few things I want to tell you in private. He added, it's about your amnesia. I'm sure William never told you. I smiled and said, okay. William frowned, about to intervene. It's okay. I tugged at his sleeve and gave him a quick kiss on the corner of his lips. Nothing will happen on your turf. I'll be back soon. In the corner, it was just Felix and me. William lied to you. Felix calmly spoke. Your original engagement was with me. We grew up together since we were kids. At our wedding, he tricked you and took you to Seattle to marry and have children. Anything else? I asked indifferently, occasionally probing. Felix choked up. He looked down, gestured for me to look at the engagement ring, and his voice suddenly softened. We had a disagreement, and you got mad and threw the ring into the pool. I searched for it for a day and night, then got sick for a long time. By the time you left with William, you had no idea that I didn't find anyone new in all these years. He muttered to himself, with traces of your love all over the house. Your love was too sincere. I always thought I could easily get you back. But when you left, I realized I was completely wrong. I found out that I had fallen in love with you. We're even now, Sophia. I nodded. Yes, it sounds like we're even. Just as Felix breathed a sigh of relief, I smiled and said cheerfully, since we're even, why bother coming to me again? I finished the last bite of pastry, patted my dress, and stood up. I suddenly remembered that I had once loved someone so wholeheartedly, but he missed his chance. Before I left, Felix stopped me, almost gritting his teeth. Sophia, you can be indifferent to everything else, but William really isn't a good person. If he's innocent, why did he let you lose your memory for 3 years? I walked away without stopping. Don't worry about it. When it comes to William, I know I've also forgotten some things, but I remember that in the second year in Seattle, his good friend came to drink with him. After a few drinks, his friend, quite drunk, teased him. William, I heard you got married. Did you marry your sweetheart? I happened to be at the door to the private room at that moment. Hearing that, I inexplicably felt anxious. Next moment, I heard William's silly chuckle. Of course, I did. He laughed drunkenly. No regrets in this life. I sat in the passenger seat, as William tapped the steering wheel casually, his eyes avoiding mine. Did Felix do anything to you? I shook my head, and after a moment of silence, William said, he has told you everything. So, will you blame me? Will you blame me for taking advantage of the situation? Will you blame me for not telling you the truth all this time? I don't blame you, I explained calmly. I like you. William was stunned. Little by little, he turned red. I lightly touched his chin, forcing him to face me. Now that you know the situation, it's your turn. In his surprised gaze, I kissed his cheek gently. In the silent acknowledgement, now it's your turn to speak, William. Actually, I've always known that he liked me. Even when his lips were sealed, his love would show in his eyes. But occasionally, I wanted to know where this love came from. As the one being loved, I felt I had the right and duty. William was frozen in place. Finally, after a long time, he found the starting point of this long, secret admiration, and slightly moved his lips. It was indeed a simple story. William is 7 years older than me and Felix. He was the youngest in his generation, and didn't have playmates growing up due to the age gap with Felix. I didn't know William, but the garden where Felix and I played happened to be beneath his window. One day, you left a small clay rabbit on my windowsill. William smiled lightly, looking incredibly gentle. When you were tired of playing, you used to sit on my windowsill and stare out, not knowing that it was a single-sided glass, and I could see you from my room. Later on, my family suffered. I struggled through education and career, with no support. Yet miraculously, all my troubles seemed to resolve themselves without any effort. My school bullies would trip and fall down the stairs or drop out. Relatives harassing me would meet misfortune and disappear. The boss who stole my work would suddenly be transferred far away. And there was the room without a closed door on the day I eloped. Memories slowly resurfaced. I looked at William in astonishment, realizing it had been him all these years. Why didn't you ever say anything? There has always been a one-way glass between us. When William secretly watched me through the glass, my gaze fell on the garden. But when I turned around, I couldn't see him through the glass. As I chased after others, someone had been loving me hopelessly all those years. William remained silent, just lightly planting a kiss on my forehead. But I waited for you, Sophia. So, everything was worth it. William's epilogue. William first saw Sophia when he was 12 years old. Felix brought a little girl to the house to play. She was wearing a red dress, with her arms exposed, swaying as she walked. William thought she was cute, like a koi fish in a pond. He found out her name was Sophia, and silently repeated it in his mind. How do kids greet each other? William wondered, then softly said to himself, nice to meet you, Sophia. William didn't like Felix. That troublemaker actually pulled Sophia's braid. Seeing Sophia in tears with her braid undone, Felix ran off, leaving William to console her. With a heavy heart, he offered, don't cry. I'll help you braid your hair back, okay? Sophia, while tearful, remained cautious and asked, who are you? William hesitated for a moment before lying, I'm Felix's brother. Even as a child, others shied away from playing with him once they knew his status. But William didn't mind as much, except when it came to playing with little Sophia. That day, Felix returned with the housemaid to help Sophia fix her hair, only to find his distant nephew sitting behind the little girl, patiently braiding her hair. It was a side of William that Felix had never seen before, gentle and diligent. Mystified, Felix looked up and rubbed his eyes, wondering if he was hallucinating. The teenage infatuation lasted long after Sophia moved away, her laughter no longer echoing in the garden. When Sophia, flustered, rushed into his room in a wedding gown, William's heart couldn't help but race uncontrollably. Meeting Sophia again, he gently closed his eyes for a moment and said, nice to see you again, Sophia. This time, I won't just stand by and watch you walk into someone else's arms. It took Sophia a long time to realize his love for her, and gradually, William was able to tell her the story, bit by bit. Marrying Sophia was the most important thing in William's life. Amid the bustling city lights and fireworks, she was the flame that would never be extinguished in his life.